Ashley Naylor, all the way from Texas, USA, the other side of the planet. Good to see
Yeah,
you here because you will be back in Melbourne next month, but right now you're on the road with the church.
yeah, on the road. We're in Houston today and played Austin last night. And yeah, it's been an amazing tour. Like, yeah, hard to describe really.
You would
But
have been to the US quite often, I would imagine, over the years with various bands.
yeah, not a lot. I mean, the first time I went was 30 years ago with the band Pray TV. We did a showcase in New York and LA for the Radioactive record label. And coincidentally, Martin from Pray TV is a collaborator with Steve Kilbey. And Steve didn't know that Martin and I were buddies. Like that, Steve only realised that in the last few years that Martin and I go back to the late 80s, early 90s kind of scene.
The new album, Soundtracks Volume 2, obviously the sequel to Soundtracks Volume 1. And
Yeah.
do you write this music with, visuals in mind?
It's a great question. I don't think I have. I think as far as I get is the album cover and the kind of aesthetic around that. And it's interesting. I don't think I've actually heard the word Soundtracks Volume 1 said out loud before. I've just seen it in print or on the album cover. But I'm glad I did that because it set up a precedent for having a series of works. But no, I don't really have visuals in mind. I mean, one of the basic ideas is for people to insert their own imagery. And that's what I'm loving about making instrumental music and always have loved about making instrumentals. You can just hopefully the music evokes some imagery for the listener.
Yeah, because when you make an even record, obviously you've got four guys, with all their different input that's coming here. With the two Soundtracks albums, has this been 100% Ashley Naylor?
Yeah, for the most part, I'll draft people in to help me record certain parts that are just out of my skill set. Like, I mean, I play drums and on a lot of the songs on this one, and a bit of piano, but I've got my mate Wes Prichter playing clavinet, organ, and piano, and a couple of my drumming friends, Lachlan O'Kane and Danny Leo, played drums on tracks I thought I wouldn't. Hopefully I'm self-aware enough to know that I can play certain kinds of drum tracks, but then other ones that are a bit out of my league. So I'll draft people in, but it is an indulgent process. But I think at this point in my shelf life as a musician, I think it's important to really follow something through, and doing these instrumental records is my sort of it's a really personal thing, and it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be kind of like as if I was scoring for a film. You'd be doing. I tend to work quick and well in solitude, and that might sound callous or mercenary, but that's just the way it is.
Because when you talk about having, other people involved, obviously when you take this to the stage, when you do it in a live sense in coming weeks, as you will be doing in Melbourne at Brunswick Ballroom, who is the band that you bring in around that?
Wes, who I mentioned, Wes Prichter will be playing keys, Lachlan O'Kane on drums, and Richard Bradbeer on bass. And I've played with Lockie and Rich. About 10 years ago, I did some shows with Kevin Mitchell, aka Bob Evans, and I was in that band with Lockie and Rich, and I knew then that I could really let fly in a sort of in another capacity, and that's why I drafted them in to do the show. We did one at Shop Kickers in May this year. I was liberated by not having to sing, and not that anyone ever made me sing. I did it by choice. Everything I've done is by choice, but it was just nice having that luxury of just stretching out on the guitar. And some of the tracks that we played are very formatted, but others had a bit more room for me to stretch out and kind of live out my 70s rock fantasies.
When I look at the length of the two albums, Volume 1, 12 songs, 43 minutes, Volume 2, 8 songs, 45 minutes, you've actually got a set list there. If you chose, you could do Volume 1 and Volume 2 as a complete show.
I would love to, mate. If the demand was there, I'd do it.
So what will you be doing with the show then?
I'll be splitting it up, like the ones off Volume 1 which are more conducive to a live event. I'll do maybe 3, maybe 4, and I'll probably do at least half of the new album, maybe even 6 tracks. I'll probably do a couple of the solo pieces live as well. Not an intermission, but sort of just strip it down for a couple of tracks. And it's all a bit of an unknown quantity because I've only done one show like this. You know, it took me 53 years to do a show like this. So this is my second one in this guise. And it's a gamble because you're trying to encourage people to come and take a gamble. It's something that they don't really haven't got their heads around yet because it's new for me. You know, I've always had instrumental tracks on Even Records, and I've always recorded instrumental tracks ever since I was a teenager. But actually committing them to a release, it's a new frontier for me, which started in 2020, and that was due to the unforeseen circumstances of being holed up at home. But I turned it into a positive, and I recorded the bulk. Well, a lot of the volume one was done in my lounge room or on my couch. You know, it was just. But to answer your question, it'll probably be 3 or 4 off the volume one, 4 to 6 off the new one, and then a few covers, just as a bit of a sweetener for who comes along, because just to spice it up a bit, put a few songs in there with vocals just to mix it up so that it's not like a completely one-dimensional experience.
I would imagine Cry Baby Jam would have to be one of the live ones that you'd be considering.
Yes, it is. It's in fact, that was pretty much recorded. What you hear is essentially it is a jam. That's why I called it a jam. Lachlan and I just ran the chords past Lachlan a few times, and then we just put it down, and then Wes did 1 or 2 passes of his thing, and then I chucked bass on at the end. So it'll get a run for sure. Hopefully no one runs to the bar.
But I can't help but think that you were sort of channeling Hendrix through that track.
Oh, I think I got into it when I was about 17. So like in the late 80s, like I was getting into Woodstock and Hendrix and Crosby, Stills and Nash and The Who and the Beatles and the Kinks, sort of from 85 onwards, which was running parallel to my love of bands like the Smiths and R.E.M. and the Church and all these sort of indie bands that have a bit of no, indie's not the right word actually, because all those bands I mentioned were all signed to major labels. But yeah, Jimi Hendrix, you can't overstate his importance, and the spirit of his music is something that really inspires me. So if it's by osmosis that I've kind of, there's always been something. So I don't know, every time I record, there's something about the influence of him that comes through. It might not be overt, but it might only be for 5 or 10 seconds in a burst. But that kind of, that spirit of his music it's just, for me, it's about freedom. Like if you think of even the singles that he put out are pretty wild. Like there's nothing like that on the radio these days. It wouldn't you wouldn't get it on the radio. You
talk about with the pieces of music themselves, allowing the audience to create their own visual with the soundtracks. But, the titles are very visual in themselves. Spaceship, South Fremantle, Siesta Motel, Les Paul Waltz. You're actually giving them a hint to where, that imagery should be going in the title.
Yeah. It's very true. Perhaps I should just do an index number next time, just like a number. But it's, I think it's also to give me a signpost to commemorate that moment. Like, for example, South Fremantle was at a friend's house. I borrowed his guitar, Don Mariani from the Stems, who I play with from time to time. I borrowed his guitar when I was staying with him, and I had my phone. I just recorded on my phone. It's like, well, that's a signpost for that. And the spaceship, it's like every time I kept hearing that back when it was getting mixed, I felt like I imagine it'd be, like it's a 9-minute track. I imagine it'd be something like gearing up to take off. Like the first half of the song is all about strapping in and setting the controls for the heart of the sun. And then the second half is like you're in orbit, and then the guitar just completely changes course. And then it's kind of this relentless guitar expedition until you get to the final destination when the song just lands, like as if it were a spaceship. And that's kind of what I've called the project. It's my spaceship. Like I don't want to be bound by anything. And for me, the idea of being in a spaceship is kind of limitless. Obviously, there's limits to it, but yeah, you're right. Like that, they do conjure up some kind of images, but Les Paul Waltz, you can't get any more overt than that. It's essentially what it is. It's you know, a homage to the great innovator and great musician, Lester Paulson.
Mm. Well, I must admit, lemon meringue leaves nothing to the imagination, and I know what I'm having for lunch today, thanks to you.
Oh, good on you. Well, it's funny. I named that after the guitar that I played it on because it was a white Strat that changed color over a long time, ended up turning into a lemon color. So I called the guitar lemon meringue. So,
Well, there you go. My visual did not go there.
well, as long as you enjoy your lemon meringue.
Yeah, you've had the opportunity to play with quite a lot of other artists over the years. It's a fascinating career when we, look at what you've done over all the years. You've played with so many artists. You've been part of the Rock Whiz Orchestra, and I think Countdown Spectacular. People you played with like Stephen Cummings and all of that. How do you go from one act to another and just fit in?
I think a lot of it's about preparation. Like I've learned a lot by osmosis playing with people like Stephen and Pete Luscombe and Bill McDonald and Paul and Vicar and Linda. And not that I haven't learned as much playing in the pub bands of Swarm and Even and Rail and Ronson Hang Up. Every band situation is unique to itself. But I think to answer your question, I think as I've gotten older, I think it's about preparation, like going into a show, making sure you've prepared as much as you can. Things are going to change in rehearsal a bit, but it's about doing the work. And I think it's been good for me to be. I mean, I've done more homework in the last 30 years of playing in pubs and concert halls than I did at school. So just learning songs but it's easy to learn something when you love it. Like when you love playing your instrument, it's easy to accumulate knowledge. And I've learned a lot. Like people like James Black at Rock was it taught me how to listen as well. Like the art of listening. It's an art form unto itself. When you're learning a song, you can sort of get a general idea of how a song should be or go, and you hear the chords and you kind of piece them together. But if you listen, as I would say, listen forensically, hearing how chords are voiced and whether the guitar player is using a pick or fingers. And so, there's a lot of learning involved and rehearsing. And then I guess the counterpoint to that is me doing these records of my own where I'm free. Not that I'm not free in the other situations, but there is a format and you have a role to play. So it all balances out. But that I never had a master plan. Like I still don't. Like there's no plan involved. I'm not very strategic, which could be a disadvantage in some aspects of career. But also adaptability. You have to, if you in the Australian scene in particular, if you think about longevity, you have to be adaptable. And I'm sure a lot of artists would understand that it's hard to make a living out of just doing one thing. You kind of have to, leapfrog and use stepping stones from one thing to another.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's no master plan. I've just been lucky. I've got good breaks from good people, and I think once you get a good break, you try and earn it and maintain it. Yeah.
What about with a band like the Church then? When you come into a band that's been around for 40 years, and all of that catalogue behind you, do you just learn the set list? Because obviously somebody just can't yell out something randomly from the audience and expect that you will know every song.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So yeah, when I first joined in May 2019, I got a few set lists from the band and what they were playing at the time. So I learnt maybe 20, 25 songs. And then when everything went down during COVID, I would practice. I still practiced, not knowing when we were going to play live. It took me 2 years to do a show. So I had like a set of the most likely songs that would be played. So yeah, we have a set list, and on this tour we have a set list every night, essentially the same list every night, which is really helpful because you can get into a groove that way. I guess the truth be known, though, the first music I ever played with the church was in a recording session in November 2019 where we were making new music. So the five of us got together and made completely new music. We didn't play any of the pre-existing church material. And that music became what the tracks that ended up on the Hypnagogue album. So I was lucky. I had a bit of the best of both worlds. I got to learn all these classic songs that I grew up with and loved, and also got to contribute to the making of new music.
Yeah. I know Steve's not a big fan of the Unguarded Moment, and he's told me before that, one of the things he loves about America is that it wasn't a hit there, so he doesn't have to play it.
Well,
have you been
funny
playing
you
it?
should say that. We've been playing it every night.
Oh, really?
Last night we didn't play because we did a festival in Austin and we had to cut a few songs out. But we've been playing it every night. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. Like,
it's a classic in Australia. I don't know that the Americans know it that well, though.
Well, it's funny you should say that because there's a whole new generation of church fans of these shows. Like you're looking out in the audience and there's people who are, early 20s upwards, and I think that newer generation of church appreciators would know that track. And Steve has developed a bit of a shtick about the song, which it's pretty cool actually. But he plays it and he plays the hell out of it, and we do a really good version of it. And it's a sublime piece of music, like the Peter and Marty guitar lines, and it's just amazing to play. Like look, I mean, I've only been in the band 4 years, and I'm not sick of it. I'd never get sick of it.
Yeah. With all this that you're doing, do you have time for even anymore? What are the plans?
Well, we having a sabbatical. I'm not sure what the right word is, but we did a double album in 2021 and recorded a lot of shows over that period, 21, 22, and did 2 nights at the Northcote Social Club playing Reverse Light Years in full. And when the dust settled from that show and the cymbals stopped rocking, I took it upon myself to just take a breath and just try and envisage what the future would hold for the band. And that, for me, that involves just having a breather. And one day down the track, I don't know when, I'd like to go through the multi-tracks of the shows that we recorded, because there's one thing our band never did was do a live album. And technology being what it is now, we've been very fortunate to have a lot of the tracks recorded and also filmed. So we got a whole bunch of shows filmed and archived for a future date. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
All right, Ash, it's been good to catch up with you on the other side of the planet in Houston, Texas.
No, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. And we've got Brunswick Ballroom coming up, so that's where people get to see you. Are there plans for any other shows around the country?
I'd like to bring this show to, as many capital cities as I can within the realms of my resources. It's look, it's where I'm at right now. I love playing my guitar and stepping out, doing my own stuff, playing my own music is a really refreshing treat for me. So I'd like to do it as much as I can.
Thanks for joining us here at Noise 11.
Thanks for having me.